This past week in my in-person water media class, someone wanted to learn how to paint rocks. And so I thought that I would go through and show you what my process is. And if you would like a full tutorial on this, just drop it down in the comments. Thank you. First of all, in my class, we started with a reference of rocks. I took this by the river that I like to walk by that I'm doing a series on. And I thought it would be well suited for watercolor and acrylics. And so some of the dominant colors in there are blue and burnt sienna. And so you can get a whole color range with ultramarine blue and burnt sienna for either acrylic or watercolor. And since I teach water media, I'm going to show you both techniques. I practiced a little bit, and this is a wet into wet rock where I wet the paper, and then I wet the paint, and then dropped in some colors, and then put the water by it. As I put the water in, it cauliflowered, or you can call it, I charged it so that it would look like water coming out. In order to add more texture to the rock too, you can add papers to it. And I like Ginwashi papers and other decorative papers. This is what it looks like. It's a rice paper. And you can apply it with golden regular gel or a golden medium. I like the golden products and also the Liquitex products, and you just glue it on. And so that's what I did here, is I glued on some texture, and you can paint on top of it. This is not, fully been painted on. I used some tissue paper. It kind of wadded up a little bit there, but tissue paper can work really well. You just have to work with it to see, how you want it to look. And so that was what I had worked on to decide on this. If you're doing a watercolor, you draw it onto the paper, and I just used a pencil line to draw it on, and then started adding layers of paint on with a cat's tongue brush, which I love. In order to add some of the texture, you can do different things. You can use plastic wrap. So what I did was I took a piece of plastic wrap, and after I had put one layer of paint down, then I scrunched this. Well, and it had dried, I put another layer of paint, and when you go like this, it dries in these little shapes, and you can arrange the shapes however you want. And so that's one way to do it. This, like I said, this is in process right now and is not quite finished, but if I want to add more of the details to it, such as there's some details in here. I can either do it with the plastic wrap, or I can use a toothbrush and take paint and just spatter it on all over the place. I probably, since I did not save some of my whites with masking fluid, I will take this and splatter some white gouache so that it will look like the white water splashing up on the rocks. There's many other things that you can do. My favorite books that illustrate the textures on this are one by Linda Stevens Moyer. I cannot get it into the screen here. There we go. Linda Stevens Moyer. Light up your watercolors layer by layer. And so she demonstrates how to do all of the textures, whether you use salt, plastic wrap, spattering, scraping. There's all kinds of things that you can do. And here's a good example of some of the rocks that she's done. She also uses a technique called dry brush, where you have almost no water in the brush and you just brush it on to make it look rough. And so those are some things that you can look at, as well as I like this book by Joe Garcia. It's absolutely one of my favorite books of all time, Mastering the Watercolor Wash. He even has rocks on the front of this book that are loosely done. I imagine that he brushed on a color and let some other colors run into it, and then let it dry, and then defined some of the edges. He does have a lot of things, pages in here about creating textures, so that you would be able to look at this for a reference. And also you can use something called a palette knife to scrape, areas into the rocks. I like his use of salt too. That's in foliage, but he also uses it on rocks. And there's other things that you can do if you really like to work with acrylics as well. And these can be used with watercolor too, but I think that acrylics are really suited for some of the things such as molding paste. This was the beginning of that rock picture, this one right here. And I had put some molding paste on here with a palette knife. This is golden molding paste. It looks like this. Just like the name says, it comes out like a paste. And I have a canvas here where you can see that well, actually I can use this one right here too, where you can just spread it on like this and just create all kinds of shapes in it, like water or the rocks. And so really you have so many options with this sort of thing. And then when it dries, you can paint over it. You can also mix this into paint. And some of this also was gesso. I like the golden heavy gesso. It makes a lot of the shapes that you want. And when you spread this on, here, I'll put some of this on too so you can see this. I think that might have been what I used on some of this. But you can make all kinds of textures by the way that you hold your palette knife and maybe pull up on it like this. And so since this rock had a lot of lines going across this way, I think that I'm going to make some of those shapes of lines. This also had one right here. So I can let this dry and do another video on and show you what that looks like. My in-person classes are so busy right now that probably in December I will try to finish these up and make more videos on how these turn out. So I'm just going to show you for a minute what else I have started, and hopefully they will be done at least by December. So hold on just a second. Once again, here's the reference for this one right here, and this is going to be a watercolor. I have to create more contrast and more detail in this. I believe it's upside down, but you get the picture. This is one of my charts where I decide on the colors. These are my favorite ways to mix darks, is using a green and red or a burnt sienna and an ultramarine blue. This is a reference of some of the rocks by the river, and this is how I usually do my classes, where I make reference pictures so that they can look at them. And if they want to, bring their own reference pictures, they can too. This was the beginning of an acrylic that I had toned with a burnt sienna. Maybe it might have had some quinacridone, nickel hazel gold, but I don't believe they make it anymore. So anyway, using the colors of something similar to burnt sienna and blue, I mixed the colors, and this is what it's coming out so far because I wanted it to be more vibrant. Here is another one. The way that I did the water here was I added some molding paste, and I'm creating some of this swirl, which I'm going to go back on and create a lighter shade on the rocks. This is the reference for it right here. And so this is what it looks like in acrylic with some of the texture added to it. And it'll, I need to refine this a little bit with some details. This is what it's looking like in watercolor. I don't love the way that I stuck this little picnic hut in here, so I'm going to minimize that. I'll tone down the colors on it. And if I need to on this one, I might add some gouache into it. Right now it is transparent watercolor, so this is what I've been doing. So if you're interested in more tutorials on how to do this from start to finish, just let me know. This is Barbie Mathis, and please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for visiting my channel.